Hi, I'm Margaret Lewin and welcome to Margaret Lewin Quilting. Today is the day that we start on block number 29 for Moda's Stitch Pink 2020 Breast Cancer Awareness Quilt. And I'm excited to bring this one to you. I have done a couple of things different this time because of the fact that we are dealing with so much bias. The way that these half square triangles were cut, we've got an additional bias that we've got to deal with. And the bias is coming from here. And I want to make sure that I've contained that and that I'm doing good and don't stretch it out of shape. So excuse what's sitting in front of you right now. It might be a little confusing, but in just a second I'm going to move things around and I think it will get better. So right here is the outside of my block, or the bigger portions. So here on this template, it's these blocks and these blocks. So anything that doesn't have a lot of piecing to it is sitting on this board. So now I'm going to put that one aside and hopefully not lose any of my pieces. That's what's nice about these wool pressing mats. You can move things around and they won't slide. Whereas on this one, I'm dealing with my Creative Grids ruler. I didn't have another one that was big enough to put everything on and to move it around. So I grabbed my 20.5-inch Creative Grids ruler. So these are the sections that are little pieces that need to be put together. So what I'm going to do, or what I have done, is first thing I did was I starched them very, very heavily. You can see I have both my pink colorway and my black colorway. What I'm going to do is start by building rows. So to me, here's a row and here's a row. I'll put those together. Then I will join it all into one. Same here. I've got one row here and another row. Then I'll join them together. That's what I'm going to do first. And then that way I believe I will be able to get things squared up properly, so I will not have any issues. Also on these blocks, I will stop and square this up right here when I get it together. Same down here. I'm going to stop and square this up and this up before I add these and before I add these. That will help me to make sure that I am staying square, which we all know is extremely important to me. I have increased the size of these, so I know I must stop and square up as I go along. And the good news is we do have a square up measurement. It will square up at 2 inches. So I'm going to go start putting these together, and then I'll come back and let you know how it's going. According to our directions, these half square triangle units are to be squared up to 2 inches. So that's what I'm going to do with these pink ones. I'm going to get them squared up. As I said, I did increase the size of the block, and I will go over more of that at the end. So make sure you stick around all the way to the end so you can know how big that I did cut these to start with. I'm glad that I increased them as much as I did because I think it's making a difference. I do have leftovers, but not a huge amount. I feel as if it's enough that I didn't waste fabric, and I did allow myself enough room, but not too much room, to nicely square these right up. So I'm real content with what I'm doing. I'm using my 45-degree line as I do every time I square up a half square triangle unit. And if you'd like more details on how I go about squaring up a half square triangle unit, just watch any of my videos from Stitch Pink, which is Moda's 2020 Breast Cancer Awareness Quilt. I think I've gone over this quite a few times, so if you've been watching this series, I'm certain you know by this point exactly how I do go about squaring things up. So I'm going to go back to my quilt and keep going. I've got all of my triangles made. So my next thing is I need to turn them into full-blown blocks, okay? This one was right here. So this is how I'm doing it. I'm going to take my block and turn it block side out. I'm going to then take my ruler and I'm going to measure from, I got to find a point that I can see all the way through. I've got my diagonal line right here. You can see it. I'm going to line that up with the point. You can see right going up is my diagonal. I can see that right here is my point. I'm going to just push this up a little bit because I want my sew line to be higher than, let me see if I can figure out how to explain this the easiest. I'm going to make a stitching line for myself. And I want my stitching line to be just right here. I want it just on the other side of my point. The reason I want it there is because when I fold it open, I want there to be enough room for that seam. So I'm going to bring the camera closer and show you what I'm going to do. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to put my 45 degree over here. See my 45 degree line right there? And then I'm just going to scooch this up just a little bit, all right? Make sure I stay put and don't move around. And then I'm going to draw a line. This line I'm drawing right now, that is my stitching line. All right, so I know where to stitch. So the next thing I'm going to do is grab my triangle and I'm going to pin that together. And then I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew. Then I will trim 1/4 of an inch off of here from the drawn line to there, trim 1/4 of an inch, and then I can square it up and we'll be ready to go. And I will not have lost my point. All right, and here is the proof of that. Here's my piece, and look, I still have my point, and that's what I want. I want my point. So I'm going to do that to all of these, all of my blocks, and then I'll come back and show you the results, okay? I've trimmed all of my blocks, so now I'm just dealing with straight of grain seams, which makes me very happy because everything that I needed to be careful about has been locked in with my stitches. So now what I'm going to do is treat both of these blocks just as a simple 16 patch and put it together. So I'll sew these, and these, and these, and then I will join these, and these. Simple 16 patch. I will press it and then come back and let you all see what the block looks like. And I have to tell you, right now, before I finished it up, I am extremely pleased with how this block is coming out. I'll be back in just a few minutes to show you the finished block. I have completed both of the blocks for block number 29, which is Twinkle Twinkle. And I am pleased with how they've come out. I was really concerned because we've got so much bias in this block to work with, and I was concerned that it possibly would stretch and then I would have a difficult time with it, but it did not. What I did to prepare the fabric so that it didn't was I starched it, and I do mean I starched it. I started out by starching the fabric, then I pressed it. I cut it out. After I cut it out, I turned around and pressed it again, and then I heavily starched it, and I let it sit overnight to dry is what I actually did. And based on all of those little things that I did, it really seemed to make all the difference in the world. Kept the block much more stable, so as I put it together, there were not a ton of issues. The second thing I did was I squared it up all along the way. So how I suggest you do it is you start by making these half square triangles, and here's this one over here. start by getting these made and square those up. Once you square those up, you're going to attach these two pieces. Then don't square it up again. Let it be until you add this piece. When you add that triangle to this triangle, what I did was I measured from my point all the way across that piece of fabric. You watched me do it, and I made a stitching line, and then I stitched on that line to create my new square out of 2 half square triangles. So that's how I did it. The other thing that I did, and I wanted to make sure I went through it with you, is I did change the sizes of things. If you intend to put it together the way I did, I do suggest that you do up the size of those squares, and it's 6 of them, and I'm talking about B, is up to 4 1/8 instead of at 3 7/8. The other thing I did was C. I did not cut that at 2 3/8. Instead, I cut those at 2 5/8 to make it a little easier on you guys. I'll put all this information in the show notes down there so that you'll be able to see it. D, I also increased that size. I also increased it to 2 5/8. So out of the 4 different cuttings, I increased 3 of the 4. The only one I did not change was the 3.5 inch square, which is right here. So this is how I put my blocks together. I did press the entire thing open. It seemed to go really well. There's a chance that when you get to these rows of putting it together at the end, that it may very well want to press one way or the other. If it does, that's fine, not an issue. But mine was willing to press open. Same thing on this one, I pressed my seams open for the most part. Okay, I have one that needs to be pressed again right there. So that is the conclusion of block number 29. We've got one more to go tomorrow, and we are ready to put our blocks together into a quilt, which I am extremely excited about. I cannot wait to do it. So thank you so much for sticking around all the way to the end. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to my channel. If you like these videos in this series of videos, please do consider giving it a thumbs up. And don't forget, we do have a Facebook group that has an unbelievable amount of people that are extremely supportive of fellow quilters. So please pop on over to Margaret Lewin Quilting on Facebook and do consider becoming a part of it. I will see you tomorrow for block number 30. Thank you. Bye, everybody.